Hello everyone, it's Heather from Heather Travels. With everything that's happening in the world today, a lot of people are asking, when are we going to be able to travel again? When am I going to be able to go back to Disney? When am I going to be able to take a cruise again? When am I going to be able to take that trip to Europe? There's a lot of predictions and everyone is saying different things. Scientists believe it really is going to depend on people's behavior. So everybody's asking the question, when are we going to be able to travel again? I have an answer, but I don't think you're going to like it. Okay, I am filming this video on Thursday, March 19th, 2020. And at the present time, on the day I'm filming this video, pretty much everything in the world is closed. Okay, China, Iran, Italy for sure, Spain, France, all closed. The countries. You can't go there, you can't leave. Here in my town, in my state where I live, in Wisconsin, our governor has declared a state of emergency. All schools are closed indefinitely. I've been actually kind of homeschooling my kids this week, although I think after our spring break is actually next week, and I think after that, the district is probably going to implement some kind of online learning plan that's more structured. So that'll be nice because that'll take some work off me. And all of our restaurants and bars and movie theaters are closed. You can still get food from restaurants, but you can only get it at the drive-thru or pick up, take out, that kind of thing. Most of the big stores, grocery stores, Walmart, things like that, have reduced their hours. And I think that's partially to give the employees time to clean and restock overnight. As of today, every single Disney theme park in the entire world is closed. Basically, every cruise line has shut down and suspended operations. And the airlines are just cutting flights like crazy. The government just released an announcement that they are very likely or definitely going to be giving some kind of financial assistance to the airlines because they predict most airlines will go bankrupt by May. So there's a lot happening. It's a scary, uncertain time. Things change literally every day. Things change so fast you can hardly even keep up with the news. And so people are wondering, what about the plans we had? What about our vacation? Okay, here is my educated guess on when you should realistically plan to be able to take your next big trip, okay? Whether that be going to Disney, going on a cruise, a big trip within the United States, a big trip to another country, something like that, okay? And it may even come down to even travel, to a neighboring state or something like that. My prediction, to be safe and reasonable, I'm a realist, is that we will be able to travel again in the latter half of 2021. So I'm talking July, August, September, October, November, December of next year. Okay, that might be freaking you out. This is why I think that. I am basing my prediction and my guess on 4 things. Number 1, I'm basing it on the data. If you look at how things have happened in China and how things have happened in Italy and how things are now happening in the United States, and you look at the information we have and the numbers, and I'm gonna, you look at the map here from the World Health Organization. This, by the way, is a great tool. I look at it every day to keep track of the data and the numbers. If you watch this and see how things are changing over time, you can see what I'm talking about. If you click on an individual country, you can see specific numbers for that individual country, which is really helpful. So that's one thing I'm basing this guess on. The second thing I'm basing this guess on is these 2 articles, which I'm going to put in right here. These 2 articles talk about what kind of the global and U.S. plan are thinking is realistic. And so I take I think that that's probably accurate. The third thing I'm basing this on is history. I'm a social studies teacher. I know a lot about history. I have a lot of interest in history. If you look at the flu pandemic of 1918 to 1919, which was very similar to this, it started in the spring of 1918 and it really didn't end until the summer of 1919. So that was more than a year, not quite 18 months, but pretty long. And I feel that this is very similar to this. I talked about this book, I think, in another one of my videos, but one of my favorite books I've ever read, and if you want a good book to read, if you can get it, an audio book, I think, or ebook, because your library is probably closed like mine. It's called As Bright as Heaven by Susan Meisner. I really like Susan Meisner. I've read quite a few of her books. She's written some really good historical novels. They're very realistic and they really bring out the human experience of like individual people and families. I mean, they're fictitious people and families, but she bases them on historical fact from key moments in history. And check out her books. I really, really enjoy her writing. And she wrote this book, As Bright as Heaven, about the 1918 flu epidemic. And I read it in 2018 when it was exactly 100 years later. And it really was a powerful book, and it has a lot of connection to what's happening now. And so I really encourage you to check that out. The fourth thing that I'm basing this on is the time that it takes to produce an effective vaccination. So to come up with a vaccine for this particular virus is going to take 12 to 18 months. That's just how long it takes to make a vaccine. So even though the president might promise, oh, we're going to come up with a vaccine really fast and stuff, you can't. That's just not possible. And he's also, even just today, I saw a press release where he was saying, we're coming up with treatments. Here's the thing. It's a virus. Viruses, if you know anything about viruses, there's really not a lot of good treatments for viruses. We have medicines for bacteria, but for viruses, you really have to have an immunity to the illness itself. Treating it afterwards is, not really the greatest option and doesn't always work. And so, I mean, there's some success with like HIV and hepatitis and things like that, but I think that that's an optimistic view of it. Yes, it might help people in the meantime that do get really sick, either lessen the duration or the severity of the illness or prevent death. But I don't think people should be thinking of it as like a cure, because I don't think that's really realistic. So I think our best hope is for an effective vaccine, and I think that that will probably be at least a year away. So that's what I'm basing my educated guess on. Okay, so let's talk about our family's personal travels and how did this affect our plans. Okay, so first of all, I got to go back to last year. On Halloween of 2019, Princess Cruises had a $1 deposit sale. And I got really excited because one of the things that's an obstacle to me oftentimes for being able to plan well enough ahead is I never seem to have a big enough chunk of money to put the deposits down, like for a cruise or something. And it's, they usually require about 20% of the value of the cruise unless they're having some kind of promotion. So I got pretty excited when I saw that $1 deposit sale. And actually for the three of us, me, Megan, and Ben, to put down a deposit on this Princess Alaska cruise in August of 2020 only cost me $2. They didn't even charge me the dollar for Ben. So, because he was like the third one in the stateroom or whatever. So I had actually booked a 7-night Alaska cruise going to Glacier Bay out of Seattle on Ruby Princess last Halloween. Okay. Before this whole thing even started, I think it was around Christmas time or a little bit after Christmas, I already started to have reservations about that booking that I had made. I made it really quick. It was kind of an impulse thing on the spur of the moment. I figured no harm, no foul, if nothing else. I wasn't even out my $2, honestly. They gave my deposit back to me. So I started to have reservations for a couple of reasons. One, I didn't like the dates. It was 1 week earlier that I wanted to go, and I really wanted it to be over the week of my birthday, and it wasn't. And I wasn't happy with that, and I can't remember if I couldn't change it or what the deal was. And then the other thing is when I started researching the deck plans and the floor plans of the ship, I didn't like our room. For some reason, I had booked a balcony stateroom, but for some reason those older princess ships, not the royal class, but the older ones, the standard balcony staterooms are kind of small. They have a really big walk-in closet, but there's no couch. It's just like the bed and a chair maybe, and then the balcony. But I had to call and ask, and I'm like, wait, where's the third person supposed to sleep? And she said, oh, it'll be a berth that comes down. So basically, we would have split the bed into two twins for me and Megan, and then Ben would have been basically like above one of us. And I didn't like that at all. And I don't like when there's no couch to sit on. So I looked, and I would have had to upgrade to a mini suite. And when I considered the price difference to upgrade to a mini suite, well, then it put the entire cruise out of my budget. And so I ended up canceling that one because I just decided, nah, I don't want to do this one right now. We'll save Alaska for a different time. I had a lot of other things I wanted to do in 2020. And so I canceled that one, got my $2 back. That was the end of that. I think I canceled it in like early January, maybe. Okay. Going into 2020, I had a lot of things I wanted to do. Here's what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something with the kids over spring break. I wasn't really sure what. Some of the options I was considering were taking the train to Chicago and going to Chicago because we haven't been to Chicago in 6 years. Another option I was considering was going to either like St. Louis and the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Museum in Springfield, Illinois, going to see the Arch and all that, maybe driving down to Branson, perhaps going to Silver Dollar City. I had considered that. Another option I had considered was driving to Tennessee and going to Dollywood and the Great Smokies. That was another option I was considering. I was also considering going to Washington, D.C., and like Colonial Williamsburg, maybe Busch Gardens. Those were all things I had kind of in my head for spring break this year. Well, I still was kind of considering them all right up until it came to the point where it was apparent we were not going to be able to do any of that, basically because every single thing I was considering is closed. So, and then it just became the whole social distancing thing, and I'm like, well, that wouldn't make any sense at all. So that was out. Okay, the next thing I wanted to do, or is planned to do, Megan is still booked, and she is supposed to go on her trip to Switzerland and France in June. I hate to say this, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to happen. The company that she's going with is actually sent us an email a little while ago and said that they were delaying the decision about canceling until I think it's like May 8th, which is about a month before they have to go. And they were saying nobody has to make your final payment until then. We didn't have any more payments. Megan's trip is paid in full. She got a very big scholarship for this trip, which we have talked about before. And she's going to be absolutely devastated and so bummed to not get to go. And I'm going to be so sad for her. A lot of planning goes into these trips. And there were a lot of other kids that are great kids in her school that were going to go. And I mean, I don't know, some miracle could happen and they can still go. But as of right now, it's not looking good. And we're basically just waiting till May, probably, to get the official word that it's not going to happen. But, you know, I don't know. Maybe they'll still go. I don't see how that's possible. It's only like, I don't know, 80 days away or something, and I don't think it's very likely. But so anyway, there was that. Okay, one of the other things I wanted to do was while she was there, I wanted to do something with Ben because he and I have never taken a big trip together. Sorry, I'm touching my face. Don't touch your face. My hands are clean. It's okay. Anyway, one of the things I was considering with him was to go to California, and there were a bunch of different things I was considering going to in California. One really big one was going to Vidcon. We've never been to Vidcon. Vidcon just happened to be while Megan is supposed to be in France. I feel like Vidcon probably definitely isn't happening. I'll have to check on that because California is, you know, one of the big places that's having issues. So, and I had thought about that, and then maybe going to Disneyland, or maybe going to Legoland, or maybe doing some stuff in San Diego. So that was something I was considering. After a while, I kind of threw that one out because a couple of reasons. One was I didn't really want to go to a lot of those places without Megan. And I felt kind of bad about that. Like, she really didn't want us to go to Disneyland without her. So that was one thing. And then another was cost. It was a combination of like, well, if we do that, that's going to take up like all my money, and then we can't do anything at spring break. And so I was really debating it. So anyway, I ended up actually booking a cruise on Navigator of the Seas, Royal Caribbean's Navigator of the Seas, 4-day cruise, basically the exact same cruise we did in 2018. If you haven't seen our vlogs from that cruise, it's Mariner of the Seas, and I'll link it right up here. So it was the exact same cruise because the Mariner and the Navigator have actually switched ports now. So they would have been still out of Miami, still exact same itinerary, Nassau, Sea Day, Coco Cay. But Coco Cay is perfect day at Coco Cay now, and it wasn't when we went in 2018, so then we were going to get to experience that. So the boys and I were going to go on this cruise on Navigator of the Seas. I'm almost positive that's not going to happen. And when I saw that this was starting to happen before even the cruise line shut down, I canceled that one and took advantage of Royal Caribbean's giving me a future cruise credit. They actually gave me most of my money back. It was kind of weird. They gave me most of my money back, but I'm almost positive they're giving me my deposit as a future cruise credit. I'm not quite sure. It was weird. I had originally booked through cruise.com, and that was kind of a mess. And the day I actually called Royal Caribbean directly, I was on hold for 2 hours and 40 minutes. I do have to tell you that Royal Caribbean, I had to talk to 2 people, and they were both extremely polite, extremely professional, very upbeat and friendly, even though they had to have known I'd been on hold for 2 hours and 40 minutes and were anticipating an angry or irritated customer. At that point, I wasn't. But by the time they finally picked up, I was actually in the car with Megan. I think it was only like 2 weeks ago. And she was impressed with how polite and respectful and helpful and professional they were. So kudos to Royal Caribbean on that one. But anyway, so I'm not exactly sure what happened with that. I got most of my money back already, which has been nice because I've been using it to live off of and pay bills and stuff. I had to get a new battery in my car, things like that. But I think we do have that $200 deposit that I originally made because it was a deposit sale, I think. It was a 60% off. I don't know. They were having some kind of promotion when I booked it. And I think what we're going to do is we probably will eventually do that exact same cruise, but I think I want us all to go, all 4 of us, and I'll get 2 balcony staterooms. We were even going to have almost the exact same stateroom as we had on our Mariner of the Seas. It was an aft balcony stateroom, like literally 2 doors over from the one we had on Mariner of the Seas. So anyway, so that one's out. And here's the reason though, since it was before the cruise lines had actually shut down, it was in that period of uncertainty there where all the cruise lines started saying, hey, if you feel uncomfortable and you want to cancel, like it was after the Diamond Princess thing had happened in Japan. I don't know if the Grand Princess thing had happened yet off of California, but it was in that period of uncertainty, but before they started ceasing operations. And they were giving everybody like, hey, you can cancel right up until your cruise and all this. It was during that time. My worry was, at that time, I wasn't even worried that much about the virus itself. I'm a little more worried now as I've read more about it and the effects that it can have on people. But at that time, I wasn't so much worried about that. This is what I was worried about. I was worried that we would go on the cruise, but Megan's France trip would get canceled. And then it would be too late to add her and she wouldn't be able to go with us because I even checked on that and they didn't have the capacity. We couldn't add her to our room. It was weird. And they didn't have any quad balconies. And so I wouldn't have been able to add her if she didn't get to go to France. My other worry was her France trip would go, but something would happen to our cruise, like we got quarantined somewhere or something, like what happened to the Diamond Princess, and then she would come back from France and we wouldn't be here and she'd be all alone for weeks at a time. So at that time that I canceled that one, I was more worried about something like that happening. Okay, the only other thing that I had kind of wanted to do in 2020 was I wanted to take a big road trip around August time, across Lake Michigan on the ferry, across Michigan into Canada. I think I mentioned this in another video. Go to Niagara Falls and then go down into New York and go to like Pennsylvania, go to Hershey Park and come back and go to Cedar Point on the way back and like a big loop like that. That's, if something really great happens and we can travel by then, maybe we will do that. Or maybe I'll book that that Navigator of the Seas cruise back up for August or something, or over Thanksgiving or something like that. If something really great happens with this situation, maybe we'll do that. But I think it's more realistic that we probably won't be able to do anything until the latter half of 2021. And because of those reasons I said at the beginning. So I'm not even thinking about spring break of 2021. I'm thinking like earliest, maybe my birthday, 2021. I do have a cruise booked right after my birthday, the week right after my birthday, at the end of August 2021 on the Disney Dream. I have that booked. I think realistically, that's probably going to be our next big trip. I just don't foresee that cruises, flights, travel like that is going to happen before then. That's just my gut feeling and my prediction. I'll be pleased as punch if I'm proven wrong, but that's where I'm kind of at, and I wanted to share with you my thoughts on this. So if you're thinking about when can our family travel next, that might be a good guide for you. And I even am a little worried that maybe August might be too soon, that maybe I might have to shift that to, October, November of 2021. I don't know. But I just think realistically trying to plan or book anything between now and then might be a waste of time because it won't happen and it'll just get canceled. I might be wrong. You can leave in the comments if you agree with me or disagree with me, if you think I'm being pessimistic, if you think I'm being optimistic and you think it's going to last way longer than that, or the world's going to end. I don't know. Put in the comments below what you think is going to happen and when you think it's realistic to say that we can plan travels again. Thank you guys for joining me today. Safe travels, even if it's only to the fridge and back.